The Constitution of the United States. The U.S. Constitution is the shortest constitution in the world. It has 4,400 words. By Christine Taylor Butler. Finding the truth. Everything you are about to read is true except for one of the sentences on this page. Which one is true? The Constitution is made up of all the laws of the United States. Or, the Constitution created today's U.S. government. We'll find the answer in this book. What is a constitution? Chapter 1. The United States has the oldest written constitution in the world. A constitution is a powerful piece of paper. It can create a government where there was none, and it says what the government can and can't do. The Constitution of the United States is more than 200 years old. It still guides our country today. Creating a government. The Constitution created a federal government. That's a national government that shares power with a group of smaller governments, such as states. The U.S. federal government has many powers. It can pass laws. It can collect taxes. It can also form a military. People in all states must follow the laws passed by the federal government, but states have the power to pass their own laws. The United States has formed a military by 1794, when the Army defeated a group of Native Americans in the Battle of Fallen Timbers. The Constitution set up 3 parts or branches of the government. It created the office of President, who is the leader of the country. It created a Congress with the power to make laws. And it created a system of federal courts to try important cases. Federal Hall in New York City housed the United States government before 1790. In that year, the capital moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The leaders of the new nation had many problems to solve and arguments to settle. Should the federal government be weak or strong? Should big states have more power than small states? And who should be counted as a citizen? The Constitution answered all of these questions, but getting it written wasn't easy. In 1787, leaders of the Constitutional Convention decided on a government that still runs the United States today. Who needs a constitution? The country just didn't work right before the Constitution was passed in 1788. Here are some examples of the problems. The states wouldn't give money to the federal government. The government couldn't pay the army. Soldiers often just went home. States made each other pay very high taxes on goods. It was hard to do business. Pirates caught American sailors and made them slaves. The United States had no navy to protect it. Chapter 2. The Divided States of America. Benjamin Franklin suggested calling the new country the United Colonies of North America. The United States was not united at all when it first formed in 1776. Leaders from the new 13 states fought about almost everything. Some even refused to go to meetings. How would the country ever come together? Could they agree on a set of rules to govern themselves? This map shows the United States when it first declared independence. The first battle of the Revolutionary War was fought in Lexington, Massachusetts. 8 colonists were killed, and 9 others were wounded. Some people wanted a government to lead all the states. Others didn't. The country was fighting the British in the Revolutionary War. People wanted freedom from the British government. Some feared that a strong U.S. government would take away too much of their freedom. Each state sent delegates or representatives to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The delegates created a plan for a weak federal government known as the Articles of Confederation. The country in trouble. The war with Great Britain ended in 1783. The United States was now free, but the excitement didn't last long. The Articles of Confederation were causing big problems. There was no easy way to resolve disputes between the states. The country did not have a national court system. To make or change a law, a unanimous vote of the states was needed. That meant every state had to agree, so nothing was getting done. The Articles of Confederation were ratified on March 1st, 1781. The plan created a very weak government. Money problems. The new government didn't have any money. It had borrowed nearly $70 million from other countries to pay for the war. It couldn't collect taxes to pay its debt. States had money problems too. Massachusetts farmers rebelled against rising state taxes. The federal government had no army and few weapons to fight back. The fighting alarmed Americans. They worried that the new government wouldn't keep the peace. A farmer named Daniel Shea led 1,500 men in a revolt against the Massachusetts government. This was called Shea's Rebellion. Time to do something. The leaders realized the Articles of Confederation didn't work. The United States was falling apart. A leader from Virginia named James Madison wanted to help create a strong government. Madison thought about what would be best for his young country. He was well prepared for the large meeting or convention. He arrived before anyone else, sat in the front row, and took detailed notes each day. James Madison spent about a year reading about different governments before the Constitutional Convention. In 1809, James Madison became the 4th President of the United States. Meet the 5 framers of the Constitution. A total of 55 delegates went to Philadelphia in the spring of 1787 to work on the Constitution. These 5 men played important roles. The planner, James Madison, 1751 to 1836, Virginia. James Madison did his homework. He came up with many of the ideas for the U.S. Constitution. He used the Virginia Constitution as a model, and he pushed for a strong federal government. A small starter, William Paterson, 1745 to 1806, New Jersey. William Paterson stood up for the smaller states. Paterson wanted all the states to have the same power in Congress. His idea became the model for the U.S. Senate. The leader, George Washington, 1732 to 1799, Virginia. All the delegates agreed George Washington would be president of the Constitutional Convention. Washington was the hero of the Revolutionary War. He inspired the delegates to work hard and trust one another. The writer, Gouverneur Morris, 1752 to 1816, Pennsylvania. Gouverneur Morris wrote most of the final draft of the Constitution. He wrote the document's most famous words, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." The Uniter, Benjamin Franklin, 1706 to 1790, Pennsylvania. Benjamin Franklin was the oldest member of the Constitutional Convention. Others listened to his ideas. He gave a powerful speech. He got the unhappy delegates to sign the Constitution. Patrick Henry, the governor of Virginia, refused to attend the Constitutional Convention. He said, "I smell a rat." Henry feared that a strong government would take too many rights from states and individuals. Chapter 3. The Constitutional Convention. Patrick Henry is famous for saying, "Give me liberty or give me death," during the Revolutionary War. A date was set for a Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. On May 14, 1787, delegates met to develop a plan for a new government. But only delegates from Virginia and Pennsylvania showed up on the right date. Bad weather made travel slow and difficult. New Hampshire didn't have enough money for its delegates' trip. Others worried about the meeting's true purpose. Were the leaders planning to take away states' rights? Benjamin Franklin was not feeling well on the first day of the convention. He was carried to the meeting in a sedan chair. The Senate originally proposed that the president be called His Highness, the President of the United States of America, and protector of their liberties. Many Americans wanted George Washington to be king of the United States. Slowly, delegates trickled in. The meeting finally started on May 25th. Delegates decided to keep their discussions secret. Guards kept out the public and newspaper reporters. It was very hot inside, but the curtains and windows remained closed. The delegates agreed that General George Washington should be president of the convention. He was known for his fairness. The delegates trusted him, and they were ready to get to work. George Washington led 55 leaders in creating a new constitution. The Constitutional Convention met from May to September of 1787. Chapter 4. Working out the problems. All delegates, except James Madison, skipped some of the convention's meetings. America's leaders wanted a government that could protect people, but would still give them their rights. It would have to be fair for all the states. There were many problems to solve. Disagreements among the delegates broke out almost immediately. big against small. James Madison presented the Virginia Plan first. It called for 3 branches of government. The delegates agreed that one branch of government would have the power to pass laws. That branch was Congress. The problem was deciding how many representatives in Congress to give each state. The Virginia Plan gave bigger states more representatives. Delegates from smaller states objected. They did not want big states to have more power. Smaller states supported William Paterson's New Jersey Plan. It called for every state to have the same number of representatives in Congress. The original senators were all men. In 2006, there were 16 female senators. Delegates argued for nearly 7 weeks. Finally, Roger Sherman from Connecticut had a solution. Split Congress into 2 parts, called houses. Each state would get 2 representatives in one of the houses. This house would be the Senate. Bigger states would have more representatives in the other house, the House of Representatives. On July 16th, the agreement called the Great Compromise passed by a single vote. One problem was solved. Today, the Senate still follows the rules of the Great Compromise. Each state has 2 senators. Slavery question. Another argument among the delegates was about slavery. Under the Virginia Plan, states with slaves got more representatives. Some delegates worried that states would get more slaves to gain representatives in Congress. Some delegates at the convention tried to outlaw slavery. States with slavery fought to save it. The convention came to a halt. Again, the only solution was a compromise. Slaves would count for less than other people. Every 5 slaves would count as 3 free people. This was called the 3/5 Compromise. Slavery was still legal when the Constitution was written. The Constitution timeline. In 1776, colonies declared independence on July 4th. 1783, the Revolutionary War ends. The United States is free. 1787, the Constitutional Convention takes place. 1788, the 9th state, New Hampshire, approves the Constitution. It becomes law. 1789, the U.S. government begins operating under the Constitution. Getting to the finish line, some delegates were not satisfied. They worried that the Constitution created powers only for the government. What about the rights for the people? What about the rights for the states? Most delegates were hot, tired, and not ready for another argument. They voted no to adding a list of rights for people. They agreed to give Congress a way to change the Constitution in the future. However, on September 17, 1787, the Constitution was ready. Benjamin Franklin asked that the document be approved by unanimous consent of all states present. 39 delegates voted to accept the Constitution as written. 3 delegates refused to sign because the Constitution didn't protect people's rights. Others left early to avoid signing. In the picture, delegates wait their turn to sign the Constitution. They used ink and quill pens or feathers that were formed into pens. The next step was for each state's government to approve the Constitution. 9 of the 13 states had to approve it, but there was a great deal of debate among the states, so this took more time. Finally, in 1788, New Hampshire provided the 9th vote. The U.S. Constitution was now the law of the land. On July 26, 1788, a parade in New York City celebrated the ratification of the Constitution. Inside the Constitution. The Constitution is just 4 pages long. It has an introduction, or preamble, and 7 articles. The preamble says, "We, the people of the United States, are going to create a Constitution." Article 1 creates the legislative or law-making branch of the Congress. Article 2 creates the executive branch, the presidency. Article 3 creates the judicial branch, the court system. Article 4 explains the rights and powers of the states. Article 5 explains how Congress may amend or change the Constitution. Article 6 says the Constitution is the highest law of the land. It also states that people do not have to be religious to be elected. Article 7 explains how the Constitution is to be approved. Once 9 of the 13 states approved, it became law. The U.S. Constitution established the parts of the government that stand today. Here, members of the Congress and Supreme Court justices gathered together to hear the President George W. Bush State of the Union speech in 2005. Chapter 5. The Constitution in Action. An amendment was proposed in 1893 to rename the country the United States of the Earth. The United States Constitution is still the highest law in the land. It divides the government into three parts, or branches, so that no one part can become too powerful. This is known as checks and balances. The Constitution gives each part some power over other two. This document is the basis of our government today. The three branches. The first three articles of the Constitution set up the federal government. The articles explain the duties of each branch of our government. Each branch has different powers. The legislative branch has the power to make laws. This branch is the Congress. It includes the Senate and the House of Representatives. For a law to pass, more than half the members of each house need to vote for it. The executive branch enforces laws. It is made up of a president, a vice president, and the president's staff. The judicial branch makes sure that the laws are written and used correctly. The U.S. Supreme Court and other federal courts are part of this branch. The courts make sure that the Congress and the president apply all laws fairly. The document grows. The framers of the Constitution gave the people the power to change things as the country changed. Congress can add amendments to the Constitution. At least 2/3 of each House of Congress must approve an amendment. 3/4 of the states must also approve it. Since 1788, there have been more than 9,000 proposed amendments. Only 27 have passed. This illustration shows the celebration in the House of Representatives after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in 1865. The Bill of Rights. The first 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights. The states approved them in 1791. James Madison proposed these amendments to give people more protection from the government. The Bill of Rights protects all Americans. The rights include freedom of speech. That allows people to say and write what they think. The Bill of Rights promises Americans freedom of religion. It gives Americans the right to a trial by jury. That way no one can be put in jail without a fair trial. Connecticut, Georgia, and Massachusetts did not ratify the Bill of Rights until 1939. States proposed more than 200 amendments to create the Bill of Rights. The final version included only 10. Other amendments. Long after the Bill of Rights was approved, other important amendments were added. The 13th Amendment put an end to slavery in 1865. The 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote in 1920. Only one amendment has ever been overturned. That's the 18th Amendment. It outlawed the use of alcohol in the United States. It was approved in 1913. It was overturned by the 21st Amendment in 1933. The state of Mississippi did not ratify the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery until 1995. African Americans gained the right to vote soon after the 13th Amendment was passed. In 1870, this right became protected by the Constitution under the 15th Amendment. In 1920, the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. Here in this picture, women celebrate their victory in Washington, D.C. Still going strong. The original words that the delegates wrote in 1787 have never been changed. The founders recognized that their work was not perfect. The amendments have allowed the document to grow and change. The Constitution was a blueprint for a nation that would last for years to come. More than 200 years later, the Constitution is still the highest law of the land. The Constitution and the Declaration of Independence are on display at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. True statistics. Approved on June 21st, 1788. Approved at Pennsylvania State House, now Independence Hall. Word count, 4,543 words, including the signatures. Days it took to write, fewer than 100. Oldest person to sign, Benjamin Franklin, 81. Youngest person to sign, New Jersey delegate Jonathan Dayton, age 26. Amount a clerk was paid to write the final draft, $30. On display at the National Archives, Washington, D.C. Year of the last amendment, 1992. Did you find the truth? The Constitution is made up of all the laws of the United States. That statement is false. The Constitution created the U.S. government of today. That statement is true.